right, we're going to talk about Israeli airstrike in Beirut killing the senior Hezbollah commander and the way that people are reacting to it.
From an Israeli airstrike in Beirut has
Compare the CBS title to the next videos in the title. Yeah. Israel strike on Beirut targeting Hezbollah kills women and children. This one, in the American news, they're covering it as though, like, this is a fucking massive success. But in reality, of course, it killed a shit ton of women and children. As always, Israel is now treating Lebanon officially as though it is Gaza.
31.
I got to pee. I'll be back.
3 children and 7 women were reportedly killed. Today, Hezbollah, backed by Iran, said a second senior commander was also among those killed in the attack. This week, the Hezbollah chief said the militant group suffered an unprecedented blow after pager and walkie-talkie explosions in Lebanon and Syria killed at least 37 people. More than 3,000 were wounded. Chris Livesay is in Tel Aviv. Chris, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Jeff. It's been a week of one catastrophe after another for Hezbollah. First, it was exploding pagers, then exploding walkie-talkies, and yesterday it was the killing of a top commander of the Iran-backed group. All of it raising fears of a full-blown war.
The Israeli airstrike ripped through the heart of Beirut's southern suburbs, Hezbollah's stronghold. Lebanese authorities said 3 children and 7 women were among those killed. The target, Hezbollah commander Ibrahim Aqil, wanted by the U.S. for his role in 2 bombings in 1983 that killed more than 300 people at the U.S. Embassy in Beirut and the U.S. Marine Corps barracks. And this morning, Hezbollah announced it was also mourning 14 other militants killed in the blast, including senior commander Ahmed Wahabi. We were in northern Israel, where clashes with Hezbollah are heating up at the border with Lebanon.
All right, so those are rockets being intercepted by Israel, rockets flying from just over there on the Lebanese side of the border from Hezbollah into Israel, and it appears they're being intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome defenses.
Yoni Yacobi's family has farmed this land for 3 generations, but with Hezbollah just a few hundred yards away, clashes have become relentless.
Yeah, that's cap, bro. That's cap. How'd they been farming for 3 generations? Israel hasn't been around for 3 generations, dog. The fuck do you mean? How is that possible, bro? How many, what are the generations like? What are they, having children at the age of 10? The fuck do you mean 3 generations, dog? Israel's barely been around for that long, dude. What do you mean? Anyway, his grandpa killed the previous owners. Yeah, it's like maximum 2 gen. Okay, maximum. Grandpa came in 2 generations ago and took it. All right. Anyway, that's one part of this story, but another part of the story is like it's such a woe is me moment. It's like, yeah, when Israel strikes Beirut, okay, in a fucking crowded civilian neighborhood, that's an operational success, okay? Fantastic. They killed a bunch of militants. When Hezbollah strikes back, it's like, look at this poor farmer. Look at this poor farmer. He's been toiling the land. He just wanna toil the land, man. He just wants to toil the fucking land. It's really fucked up that he can't toil the land. It's like, damn. So there's civilians on one side, armed civilians, and there's no civilians on the other side. Got it. Okay, that seems sick to me. Definitely not like a one-sided operation here at all.
Last October, his village abandoned. Some 70,000 Israelis have been displaced from the northern border. This week, the military made bringing them home an official aim of the war.
But aren't you worried that having a full-blown war would completely destroy your village?
It's maybe. But this is my home. This is my house. Where am I going?
The U.S. is calling on both sides to de-escalate. However, Israel's defense minister says this, quote, new phase will continue until our goal is achieved, the safe return of the residents of the North to their homes. Nancy?
Chris Livesay, thank you.
Israel has said in the last hour that they have, quote, almost completely dismantled the leadership of Hezbollah with that strike last night. But
yeah, Israel, here, let's look at like actual coverage. This is also Western news, you know, Channel 4. is also Western news. There's obviously a difference, though. By the way, can someone tell me what time Name Your Price is today? Is it at 4? Or is it at 5? Is it at 4:30? Okay, got it.
Of course, it wasn't just the leadership of Hezbollah caught in that strike. The health minister...
2:30? No, I'm not subbing in. This probably starts at 5 then. Okay.
...of Lebanon said this afternoon that 7 women and 3 children also lost their lives. This is now the deadliest strike on Beirut since the 2006 war between Israel and Hezbollah. And there is real fear of escalation. That fear is compounded by the crumbling state of Lebanese infrastructure. Compared to 2006, the economy is on its knees. The health ministry is not able to cope with what war may bring. The eyes of everyone in Lebanon now is on both Israel and Hezbollah for whatever major moves they make.
No, I'm not doing Name Your Price. Name Your Price is XUC, Pay Money Wubby, Miskiff, and NMP LOL.
They make next.
Grief for what's gone before and fear for what may lie ahead. But this morning, the hope of finding any more survivors had all but disappeared. Militarily, what you're looking at was a success for Israel, claiming the life of a senior Hezbollah Special Operations Commander and at least 10 members of an elite unit within the group. This neighborhood is a well-known Hezbollah stronghold, but theirs are not the only lives that walk these streets. This is an area full of children, he tells me. We were sitting, I went down to see what happened, then I saw the bodies on the street. There is a terror in the people, he says now. They are afraid. Their fear, a full-blown...
So we can't sympathize with the Israelis being born into this conflict? That's your takeaway, bro? That's your takeaway from this process? Like, dude, who isn't? Like, the point is, if you sympathize only with the fucking Israelis in this conflict because they can't go back to their homes, right? And some of them still are able to live in their homes, by the way. They have bomb shelters and shit. But you have no sympathy whatsoever expressed for totally random fucking people when the Israeli government is the one perpetuating the conflict itself, making it uninhabitable for people. As a account that's been following since 2019, I think you already know what the problem here is in terms of the double standard being expressed. I think as a 2019 follower, you probably are coming from another community that already has a very hardline approach to the subject matter. You're just pro-Israel, and you're cynically using this as an opportunity to try and clip farm by making it seem as though I'm not talking about the very obvious double standard here. Okay? Like, it's pretty wild to consider what Israel is doing to be self-defense when it's very obviously a severe set of escalations over and over and over again. In 2024, there you go. Muslims are the greater evil, though. Yeah, but one side is Muslim, though, and anti-West. Muslims that lives in the USA wouldn't live in the Middle East. Classic. Aren't they terrorists, though? Allah, let's get them bombed. Allah lets them get bombed. Wonder why. What? No one would think that. Play the video. Streamer wrong, lol. Herbs are actually helpful. Often better using than pills. What the fuck? It seems like, considering that you've been watching since March 26, 2019, and in the overwhelming majority of your conversations, you have just talked about Muslims being wrong and whatnot. Baited? Yeah, you baited me by showing me once again that Destiny's community is just held together by pure Islamophobia. Thank you for the bait. It's so funny that it's just like you barely scratch the surface a little bit and immediately the hatred is revealed.
Many more airstrikes like this.
The building that was struck was just behind here. It is entirely surrounded by residential blocks. Now, Israel say this was a targeted strike, but unleashing this level of devastation on an area this densely populated.
By the way, here's the self-defense aspect once again. Israel-Hezbollah conflict, over 7,400 cross-border attacks since October 2023. The red is the strikes from Israel inside of the Lebanese border, and the blue is strikes from Hezbollah inside of the Israeli border. Notice that there is a very glaringly obvious imbalance here. Do you notice that? Pray tell, why is it that Israel is responsible for over 80% of the cross-border attacks since October 7? Doesn't it seem exactly like the way Israel has operated thus far in this entire conflict?
Means it's nigh on impossible to avoid civilian casualties.
These buildings are filled of civilians, were hit by Israeli airplanes, Israeli rockets.
Israel shows the entire world and all of the countries in the area that they have an insatiable appetite for more land and more death and destruction. Israel also has taught a very valuable lesson, a very scary lesson, but a very valuable lesson to all that is paying attention in the region, which is that they will never stop unless they are faced with some level of militant response, unless they are forced to stop. Okay? That's it. Because the negotiations process is obviously not leading to a positive result. So if you're telling people you're going to kill the negotiators, you're going to kill the hostage negotiators, if you're telling people, if you're showing people that like you're never going to stop unless, like, for example, when Iran retaliates, you stop attacking Iran, right, in order to avoid a regional war, you're basically teaching a very valuable lesson to people in the region, which is that Israel will never stop unless they are forced to, unless they truly feel like these guys, these militant forces can actually break through the barrier, break through Iron Dome, break through Arrow, and actually target Tel Aviv directly. This is a very troublesome prospect for the Israeli civil society. There are a shit ton, there are Israeli babies, there are Israeli children living inside of the Israeli boundaries. Okay? When you personally increase the targeting structure and offer permission to your military to strike in crowded residential neighborhoods, they might turn around and do the same to you. You cannot always rely on the United States of America to carry you across the finish line or to defend you unconditionally. Okay? If Israel's standards were universal in terms of like who gets to be killed due to their hostilities towards Israel, then these other countries would nuke Tel Aviv, okay? That's the reality. Israel has conscription. Israel has a defense force that is an occupying force. Israel has Knesset members that have also partook in these offensive military actions. If you are saying like, no, the standard is if you've ever held up an arm against us, then you're a fucking, you and everyone around you, all the civilians living in that same building are valid military targets, then what happens in that situation when the roles are reversed? This is a complete justification of October 7, by the way. If the standard was identical, then it would completely justify October 7. And therein lies the problem, because obviously no one would consider that to be appropriate because people find Israelis to be real human beings, but all of Israel's enemies to not be real human beings. That's it. That is at the heart of this glaringly obvious double standard. One side is a terrorist, the other side is excellent military tacticians. Okay? Yeah, U.S. officials concede the Gaza ceasefire out of reach for Biden. This is also fantastic because, remember, Biden ran on restoring faith in like American foreign policy and restoring faith in America's soft power capabilities and diplomacy. He said Trump squandered a lot of our good reputation around the world, right? This is an abject failure that is, I would say, far more consequential, Biden's mishandling of Israel, despite his appropriate action in Afghanistan, which could have been his legacy, his mishandling of the genocide in Gaza, okay? His mishandling of the genocide in Gaza is a historic, catastrophic failure that will mark his legacy, okay? And I will go so far as to even say that his mishandling of Gaza, if we're going to talk specifically on foreign policy grounds, a lot of you are going to get mad at me for this. I know liberals are going to get very mad at me for saying this. But this right here, Afghanistan was a big F. No, it wasn't. It was a big W, okay? Biden's mishandling of Israel conducting its affairs in Gaza squandered America's reputation that on the global stage in a way that even Trump had not done so. I'll take it to that degree. What do I mean by this? Because ultimately, even if it was a failure on all fronts, America's defense of Ukraine solidified like the Western support against Russia. Biden did NATO. The Finlandization of NATO, the NATOization of Finland happened. You know, AUKUS is strong. In terms of like American State Department interests and America like being a defensive force, being a defensive posture against like Russian incursions into Western Europe, potentially, God forbid, that was seen as a genuinely positive instance. Like that showed Biden being like a leader in geopolitics. That showed Biden sitting and assuming the role of like America being the world police. And this time, actually, it was on the morally righteous cause, technically, even if it was for the wrong reasons, right? But Gaza, on the other hand, is a direct demonstration of America doing America shit, but actually even worse because it's not even America doing the America shit. Now it's an ally doing the America shit. Okay? That, in my opinion, has proven to the entire world that actually has harmed America's standing on the global stage and has forever marred America's reputation in a way that I don't even know if they can strategically get themselves out of. That's how I feel. And I think that Trump probably would have mishandled the situation in an even worse capacity somehow. I don't know how, but he's always capable of doing that. But because Biden held the reins in this process, and because the expectation was that he was supposed to be an elder statesman with like the most foreign policy knowledge, him fucking up the bag in this spectacular of a fashion ruined America's standing globally in a way worse than Donald Trump could have done in his first 4 years. Okay? That's it. Because on the one hand, it plays this push and pull role, right? Because on the one hand, you look to what America's doing in Ukraine and the communications about Ukrainian emancipation, Russian incursion. It's completely unacceptable. Russia is violating the sovereignty of another country, right? And it is completely unacceptable. And America gets to sit there and say, we are the champions of justice. We will do the nuclear version of sanctions on Russia. Russia can no longer operate on the international marketplace in the ways that it was able to. We did everything. We did everything to Russia, right? And then right after, in that same administration, a couple years after you did the nuclear level of sanctions on Russia, Israel is doing Russia shit and then some to a country that it is to a population that is the belligerent occupier of. And you're sitting there and openly showcasing to the entire world the glaringly obvious hypocrisy, the double standard that like we get to do whatever the fuck we want. We were simply against Russia because Russia is a foreign adversary. That's the only reason why we were criticizing Russia. Not because we had any sort of like genuine moral interest in Ukrainian emancipation. And if the morality or the moral standard was obvious, if the moral standard was like a hardline position against like the violation of the sovereignty of other nations, then you would obviously be hitting Israel with Russia-level sanctions from day two. That, in my opinion, and the obvious lies that the Biden administration told at the behest of Israel, sometimes even outflanking Israeli leadership, in an effort to like protect their interests, in an effort to continue this genocide, I think this caused irreparable harm to American soft power capabilities in a way that is even worse than Donald Trump. Straight up. Yeah. Great take from Emma Miglin, who says, a catastrophic legacy-defining failure. Biden thought of himself as some foreign policy wunderkind from his time on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, but he's actually just a cocky brute. America's mishandling, America's like unconditional support and loyalty for Israel and its ongoing genocide has created a unique rift, a fissure in the way that even Western powers operate, where in my lifetime, I never thought that Western powers would start denying weapons transfers to Israel. Like, that's crazy. Okay? That's actually fucking wild to think about. Like, that unconditional support has literally gotten so, I mean, like, that unconditional support has led Israel to behave in the most unrestrained, in the most belligerent ways possible, which has caused even Western allies, like historic allies of Israel, to actually part ways with the American strategy on this issue, which is truly unique. Like, back in the day, it was only France that did that shit in Western Europe, right? Maybe Ireland. Well, Ireland historically always for Palestine, but like France would be like, oh, we don't like the NATO. This is violating our sovereignty. Fuck you. Like, that sort of shit never really happened in Western Europe beyond that. This is truly, truly a unique predicament. And if America's goals with its dealings in Ukraine and its like dealings with Russia were to make Russia a pariah, at least for Western nations, well, Russia's oil and gas contracts and its prominent role in OPEC Plus obviously makes that almost impossible. You know, it's like trying to alienate Saudi Arabia. It's just not going to happen. But beyond that, when paired up with its handling of Israel, it has created this very unique circumstance where, like, you are going to see more and more countries use China as a manufacturing hub, which they already kind of did, and like Chinese-owned corporations instead of China as a manufacturing hub with American-owned corporations, specifically because they no longer feel like they can trust anything that America or Israel touches. You can't explode civilian communications devices without incurring some kind of penalty. Just like the chastising of Russia really solidified these countries outside of the periphery, outside of America's like realm of influence, to harden their support for one another. And now you have China and Russia doing military exercises in the Alaskan coastline, right, alongside one another. Like, this kind of attitude towards Israel, I think, has started a new wave. Like, the permanent defense of Israeli genocide by American leadership, in my opinion, has created a new era, a new approach that countries will have towards American empire. It will diminish, and it has, in my opinion, diminished America's soft power capabilities.
They said that they were hitting a leader of Erdogan force. That's true, but it's not a hit, a single hit for this leader. There are 35 civilians dead in this massacre.
By this evening, the death toll had reached 37. The target of this strike was Ibrahim Aqil, a senior leader in charge of the Hezbollah arm responsible for cross-border operations into Israel. Another humiliation for the group, another security infiltration that earlier this week saw their pagers and walkie-talkies explode, killing at least 37 and wounding nearly 3,000.
I think on the long run, whenever you look around, if you're a Hezbollah member, you look around, many of the people around you will only have one eye or they won't see, which is an earnest reminder of what is at stake. And ultimately, people will doubt the equipment that Hezbollah are giving them, because at the end of the day, no one will dare shoot a gun because they might be afraid it might blow up in their face. And this is, for me, more devastating and more damaging to Hezbollah than the killing of its leader, because the killing of its military leader is business as usual. These people are military folks, and they might die while...
Does military strategy only make sense if they're hoping to start World War III or they're incompetent and the pagers were detonated early by accident? No, it's a third thing, which is that they were really fucking horny to do this, and they blew their load before they actually did the military invasion. They blew their load early because they were worried that they were about to be outed, and that they calculated it as like, hey, guess what? This will still be perceived as like a massive, success for the Israeli espionage agencies, because they're just like incredibly fucking bloodthirsty, and they're not even necessarily wrong in terms of the way that the Western media analyzed it. The Western media looked at this as a obvious W. Like they factored this as though like America was doing something fantastic, or not America, sorry, Israel did something incredible. Was this supposed to be the October surprise? I mean, is it a surprise if at this point, is it even a surprise if Benjamin Netanyahu invades Lebanon and demands American support? Like, what would the element of surprise is not there? Is the element of surprise there if no one is really surprised and Benjamin Netanyahu keeps saying he's going to do it? And like people like myself are not exactly the smartest people on the fucking planet, and I'm aware of this. I mean, to be fair, New York Times front page analysis says strong technical operation, but we question the long-term impact and goals. Yeah, dude, that's stupid. Okay, that's a horrifying way of approaching a clear-cut act of terror that the UN Human Rights Commission immediately declared a war crime, because it is a war crime. Are you fucking joking? Like that right there is yet another somber reminder of like America's role as the world police being just a silly thing that people say that America abuses and uses in an effort to advance its like horrifyingly bloodthirsty agenda. It's ridiculous. It's completely fucking ridiculous. It's like, it's a legitimate act of terror. And now you have the paper of record. Now you have the fucking paper of record defending this legitimate act of terror. Here. This is how, by the way, like, as is the case always, when you go to Hebrew outlets, okay, when you go to these outlets and when you listen to the Israelis, when they speak in Hebrew, the attitude is very different, okay? It's not like they're hiding it. They're not hiding the motivation here at all. The translate button, once again, showcasing the utter depravity of Israeli society, at least like those who choose to communicate the desires of the population. Here it is, look.
The
only thing that would bring the residents of the north back home is that our enemy will be afraid. In the Gaza Strip, as soon as they raise their heads, they will understand that we have annihilated a lot of their capabilities, and we have hurt them significantly. In the next 50 years, they will not attack Jews from there. This is what needs to happen in Lebanon. Lebanon, the country, must understand that Hezbollah is harmful to them. Beirut must burn. I'm not saying this because I'm a warmonger. No, I'm not a warmonger when I say Beirut must burn. But if you, God forbid, said Tel Aviv must burn because Israelis must understand that, they can no longer get away with this like incredibly violent endeavor, you would be branded a fucking terrorist. You would get a knock. You would get a knock on your door from American federal law enforcement agencies. That is the double standard here, okay?
אני מבין מה המחיר הכבד שיש למלחמה בלבנון. אני מבין...
Like, look at this. Look. I understand the heavy price of having a war in Lebanon. By the way, he's literally talking about like the heavy price incurred by Israeli society because they might have to go out to battle and grab arms. I understand what it means for reservists like me. He's like, oh no, I might have to like fucking go and kill some children in Lebanon. Yeah, you hear that? Oh, here, this is another fantastic one from yet another like Israeli official. This is Israel's Ministry of Education. Let's hear what he has to say.
אז אני אומר את זה לצרפתים ולאחרים, מה שנקרא, ממדינות העולם שטוענות את זה. אין שום הבדל בין חיזבאללה ללבנון. לבנון תושמד לאור כמו שהדברים מתקדמים. ואני אומר את זה אפילו עכשיו בצורה מאוד בוטה. אנחנו באירוע שבו לבנון הולכת לקראת השמדה. לא תהיה אותה לבנון כמו שהם מכירים. אני לא הולך להתעסק בצייד קטיושות של חיזבאללה. את המחיר לתוקפנות מאדמת לבנון תשלם מדינת לבנון.
סליחה, השר קיש, אתה השתמשת במילה, אני לא אמרת, ביקשת שאני לא אקטע אותך. תושמד. השמדה יש לה במינוח העברי, אתה יודע, לשר הביטחון אמר, תחזור לימי האבן.
אתה יודע מה? אני מתקן את דבריי. לא תושמד. לבנון כמו שאנחנו מכירים אותה לא תהיה קיימת. לבנון תשלם את המחיר הכבד בגלל חיזבאללה. ואני מתקן את דבריי, לא תושמד, אבל אני מדייק.
Isn't your panel in like 20 minutes? Yeah, I'm still waiting for March to show up. I know. But you should be more worried about the top of the hour, which is in 6 minutes, but it's actually right now. Because at the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break. I don't know where the fuck March is, dude. This is a little bit devastating, not gonna lie. But if you no longer want to see those ads, and you don't want to be devastated by it, all you need to do is subscribe for $6, well, $4.20, or for free with a Twitch Prime, or by getting gifted a sub. Here's the 3-minute ad break now. He's on his way. He's almost here. He's walking. I'm tracking his steps right now. He's going to be here in like 5 minutes, most likely. Fuck, if we go old school with the selfie stick? No.
This afternoon, Israeli airstrikes continue to rain down on southern Lebanon. And above the skies of northern Israel, Israeli interception rockets shot from the skies missiles fired by Hezbollah. But so far, there has been no large-scale retaliation for last night's attack. You've lived here for 40 years. You've lived through an awful lot. But are you surprised by what happened here last night? Honestly, no, he says. I expect more escalation. Funerals for the fallen this afternoon. Coffins carried draped in Hezbollah flags. But in the coming days, there will be many more. For the non-combatants, the civilians, the collateral damage of this growing conflict.
Paul McNamara in Beirut. Well, a little earlier, I spoke to Lebanon's Minister of Environment, Nasser Yassin. He's also the coordinator of Lebanon's National Disaster and Crisis Response Committee. I began by asking him for his reaction to yesterday's strikes by Israel.
The Israeli-occupied forces have been in aggressive mode for decades in Lebanon, but we've seen new shapes recently. The last week, we've seen an unprecedented, unseen attack on people carrying pagers, papers, indiscriminate in many ways, violating international humanitarian law, violating Geneva Convention.
I think this is neither here nor there, and it's not like all that significant. But it is like yet another somber reminder that like so many people who are news enjoyers, news and commentary enjoyers, do get motivated to defend these sorts of actions when they hear it on television. And they even come here, and I see it all over the internet. I see it all over online, where people are just like, oh, here, all right, March is here. He's going to get it ready. I'm going to swap over to the laptop camera. Wait, what the fuck? Oh, people defending the news, yeah. So one of the most annoying parts about this, at least for like from a deeply personal perspective, that doesn't really like necessarily matter all that much, but like is just another reiteration that like manufacturing consent works very very successfully is even like the news enjoyers who are supposed to be like progressively minded, who consider themselves to be progressives, will just like parrot whatever the fuck they hear in the news. And it also corresponds to their implicit biases against like Muslim people, Arabs as a whole. So you get to experience it here. You get to experience it all over online. Like I've seen an unprecedented amount of comments online about like how solid of a military operation this was, and people like going to crazy lengths to defend it, and saying incredibly unhinged things that they would consider to be unconscionable if the shoe was on the other foot. Like if the roles were reversed and Hezbollah did this to Israel, they would be calling it to be an act of terror, which it is. Like we can't even expect a like across the board like even playing field of morality, okay? That's the crazy part about this, because that's not even on its surface. Like even if you were to reach a moral standard that is universally applied in this situation, you still don't actually see the full depth of the conversation. You still don't even arrive at like a real conclusion, because like you then have one side that is like superior in every way militarily going against like every other fucking country in the region that has even developed militaries and has developed a militancy towards said nation as a direct consequence of that nation's actions, right? Like Hezbollah did not exist before Israel invaded Lebanon, okay? Hezbollah's existence is a direct consequence of Israel's invasion of Lebanon. This is a very important thing to understand, a very important thing to comprehend when thinking about this, when thinking about the situation across the board. But we just slap on the sticker of terrorism and we just fucking move on without ever thinking about it, right? And that is another frustrating aspect of the story. It's just like people that don't have any kind of interest in understanding the full history, any kind of interest in it, any kind of interest in understanding like the implications, the humanity and the inhumanity of the actions, especially coming from the Israeli side, is I think deluding people into assuming these positions without thinking much about it or thinking about its like larger implications, larger consequences for even America's interest in the region forever.
The government of Lebanon is hosting an organization called Hezbollah, which is using its rockets to target civilians in northern Israel, 60,000 of whom have had to move out of their homes. And that's why they've launched this attack this week, in order to stop those attacks from...
Damn, they took out our guy. Channel 4 normally is like a lot better in their coverage, but this dude is like the you know, they put the B team on, it seems.
Continuing.
Lebanon also has more than 115,000 displaced from the southern towns and villages on the borders. We are actually want to respect 1701, the UN resolution that actually was issued in 2006 after an Israeli
No, not
war
this guy. I'm talking about the white dude.
at that time. And this is the position of the government to get back the Lebanese displaced into their villages and towns, and to get the UN and the Lebanese army to patrol the borders.
But you're not in a position to stop Hezbollah, are you? They can do as ever they please. You really have no jurisdiction over them. They're acting like a state within a state.
Well, Lebanon...
This, by the way, plays an important role in manufacturing consent in the direction of American empire again, which is to separate Hezbollah as a specific entity that is a terrorist entity operating within the boundaries of Lebanon, and not as like a party beyond its militancy, right? They do? I think I prefer the magnet. How do I take this off? Oh. Are these better? Okay. Yeah, so it's like some of them are elected officials. Obviously, like Lebanon is very diverse in terms of like religion, in terms of ethnicity, even to a certain degree. But like the thing is, like ultimately, Israeli bombs make no... Just like Israeli bombs in Gaza do not differentiate between gay Palestinians and straight Palestinians, or Hamas militants and regular old Palestinian women and children and the elderly, the bombs work in that same way in fucking Lebanon. Okay? You're just blowing up Lebanese families is all you're doing in that situation. Because I mean, that is what all they're doing. That's all they're fucking doing. It doesn't change anything. So it is really frustrating to, continue this attitude, continue this narrative. Like, oh, it is what it is, And it's because of Hezbollah. Like, as though Israel would never invade or hurt or violate Lebanese sovereignty if it wasn't for Hezbollah, when Hezbollah didn't exist. Without Israeli incursion, without Israeli invasion, Hezbollah would not exist. So obviously, that's not the real fucking answer, okay? That's just a post hoc rationalization that does not exist when the shoe is on the other foot, okay? That post hoc rationalization does not exist. Anyway, I got to swap out to my IRL setup. Is it ready to go? Did you turn it on? Okay. All right. Let's do it. We're going to swap it out. I'm going to keep playing this, and we're going to move to the panel. All right, everybody. See you on the other side. I'm going to keep playing this, but we'll turn the camera on when we get in.
Due to the Israeli occupation for decades. And it's very clear when Israel stops breaking and violating the sovereignty of Lebanon and all the UN and international resolutions and conventions, this will stop.
But Nasser, Iran is using Hezbollah as its long arm to attack Israel from Lebanese territory. So what are you going to do? What can you do to stop Hezbollah from doing that?
Hezbollah is part of the Lebanese parliament. They have a significant bloc in parliament.
But dependent on Iran.
And dialogue. They have their connections, as many groups in Lebanon have their connections.
Would you call on Hezbollah to exercise restraint at the moment, however humiliated they might have been by these pager and walkie-talkie attacks?
The Lebanese government has been in dialogue directly or indirectly with Hezbollah. Lebanon has always been saying officially and through different channels that all what we seek is actually to stop this war.
You're in a very tough position. You have been for a very long time. You've got a financial crisis. You've got more than, I think, 1.5 million Syrian refugees still living in your small country. You've got, I don't think you've got a president at the moment. There's a political vacuum. Are you becoming a failed state?
We continue to take the responsibility to get along to protect people. But definitely we're under a lot of strain. What we see is a sophisticated, aggressive war machine that's actually been ongoing for months without any restriction, without any discrimination. It's indiscriminate.
The United States and the UK have both been calling for restraint ever since October the 7th. Clearly, the Israelis haven't been listening. Hamas hasn't been listening. Hezbollah's not listening. I mean, is there anyone outside your immediate region who has the power to stop this from getting worse and becoming a wider war?
This is a regional war. It's a new generation of wars, as we've been seeing. And this necessitates the presence and the push from the international community and international actors beyond just, the talk. There needs to be some work from the international actors and international players for that matter.